Good afternoon, everybody. Extreme Radio built by MDI Construction Inc. Just go to mdiconst.com or search them up on Facebook to see all their commercial projects they've got going on right now and learn how you can get a good deal with the best deal on your commercial properties. Spencer Thompson, James Shannon, and Trent Legate for Extreme Radio today. A lot to talk about with the results from the previous weekend. Some upsets, some really close games that are crucial for shaping the playoffs going forward in the Middle Tennessee Athletic Conference, and we're going to get right into those. And of course, we got some other stuff on the show. We're going to be interviewing the Lighthouse Christian School head coach. Give me that name one more time. DuJuan Sharp Jr. We'll be interviewing him in just a moment, which we have a good amount to, several moments more of. And we will be previewing the games going forward, as well as, if you saw on social media, we're revealing our logo. That'll be right before we go into our preview for the games. But first, let's get right into some of the games that we saw. Only two games that happened in the North this week. CCS Christian Community remains undefeated as they beat Bowling Green Christian Academy 60-12. Now, Trent, I know, but as I call it, Bowling Green bias for you, I know that this is an upset for you. It really is, that you unfortunately see them take a loss. But one of the good things that we've seen from this that James pointed out, Bowling Green was the first team in a month to put any score up on Christian Community. And the team who did that a month ago, a little bit of homer here, but factual, FCA, they were the only ones to put up a touchdown on them in a month. So at least Bowling Green was able to put up 12 on CCS, and it's just going to shape for a really good matchup on Friday. But I mean, those 12 points, what does that say about Bowling Green?
While Trent works out his technical difficulties. It was really interesting to see Bowling Green put up points on, and I know the second touchdown probably came on second stringers or backups, but, just to see the fight that Bowling Green had and that they didn't give up, they've been very easy, but, just an overall solid game from Christian Community. Those guys really looking strong, and, it's really interesting to see how they've all come together throughout the season. They've got some big games coming up. They've got Classical in a couple weeks. They've got a big game against South Haven Christian on Friday night. Big MTAC North battle. Of course, both teams undefeated. South Haven at 4-0 overall. CCS at 7-0. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Of course, the ball game over at CCS. So Flanders Field's going to be rocking. Of course, it's the Battle of 76. Both schools about 20 minutes apart down Highway 76 up here in Robertson County, and so it's going to be fun to see that. I haven't decided whether or not I'm going to make it to that game, or maybe I'm going to hit some more Classical. But I'm looking forward to that ball game, and it's definitely going to do a lot to shape. But just a great overall performance by Christian Community Friday night.
Yeah, I was a little bit wrong on the Bowling Green CCS part, but I just did it just have a little bit different, shake it up a bit. But Bowling Green scoring 12 points shows that they can, it shows that they fought. I don't know when it happened during the game. Don't know if it came later when the second strings would be coming in. But I do know, and remember one thing about Bowling Green last week was their offensive line wasn't really doing that great against the Heat, and then you're going up against what could be debated as the number one defensive line in MTAC right now, with Rollins, Zapata, and Webb. Right now,
Webb's back. That was a drop back to safety, but they got the senior named Ross, and he showed up quite well. But you're right. I mean, you still got Rollins and Zapata that are really solid with that 3-man.
Yeah. So kind of like that. And also the point of CCS has a great offense as well. Like they just have athletes on that team, athletes on athletes on athletes. So, good shout out to Bowling Green, not just laying down, stay fighting. They can obviously see a little bright side, though, to this with Bowling Green, seeing that they actually can score against debated the number one defensive line, and I know their secondary isn't that bad either. So, there's a lot for Bowling Green to take away from this, and not just all bad. So that's what I say. And you were right, and I was wrong.
One of the times that we see that here on the predictions, of course, that James got it right with CCS winning that game, but of course he was wrong on the Freedom Cowboys winning, being the Freedom. You predicted that the Freedom Cowboys would win against the Christian Community Colts and they would go 9-1, but they've won that game. They haven't lost a game yet, so now they're on track to potentially become 10-0 in their regular season.
And I felt pretty solid after that prediction, after seeing Freedom beat Franklin Christian rather. But now, Freedom's struggling throughout the year so far, and Christian Community looks strong. I think the only speed bump, of course, like I said, they got a big game Friday night with South Haven. They've got a big game next week against Classical. If they can get through those two games, they've got Lighthouse the last week of the season. So, I mean, by no stretch of the imagination do they have an easy end of the season. I mean, they've been playing some teams that have been struggling, but they're going to hit some good ball clubs. And yeah, Classical has 2 losses in a row, but I think that Classical is better than what their record shows. They've just been playing some tough competition as well. So, and then, of course, Lighthouse is catching on, a big win Friday night for those guys. And, as they get the season up and running, we'll see what they do against Bowling Green Friday night. But I don't think Christian Community is going to have an easy end of the season.
And I just want to say one thing. I don't know. I don't have an injury list or injury report for CCS, but from what I've heard just around, they haven't had a lot of serious injuries. And that helps a lot when you got your athletes staying healthy. And you have some other teams that players are going down. Some of your star players, I know from Hendersonville, their quarterback, Bader, had a bit of an issue with his wrist. And that isn't good when your star players has an injury kind of like that. So it's really good for CCS that they don't have any injuries.
I'll tell you this. So you talk about their offense. So far, according to the match preps, Rowley is 48 of 78, 760 yards, 18 touchdowns, 1 interception. Leading rusher is Colton Rollins. Colton Rollins, 35 carries, 385 yards. So he's averaging 11 yards a carry, and he has 6 touchdowns on the year. And then they've got Isaiah Webb, who has 53 carries, 347 yards, and 8 touchdowns. So just a really great rushing attack. Receiving-wise, they've got Jalen Klein, a senior, 13 catches, 284 yards. And if I'm reading this right, 12 touchdowns. So their offense is clicking on all cylinders. On the defensive side of the ball, though, I mean, you still got Colton Rollins, 16 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 6.5 sacks. They've got Jalen Klein with 4 interceptions, Isaiah Webb with 3 interceptions. So on all cylinders of the ball, in all facets of the game, they're clicking, and it's all coming together just right at the right time that they need it to. And they've got some big games coming up, so they're definitely going to get tested.
Yeah, and we'll see how Christian Community does throughout the rest of their season, as we do have an intense schedule of games going forward. Let me just check something real quick here. Okay. In terms of the North, South Haven and Hendersonville were on a bye. The only other team active in the North this Friday was Lighthouse, which on their looks like their second actual game of the season, because of having to drop the Hendersonville game due to the storms of Hurricane Harvey. Hendersonville had to cancel that game because of their field conditions. But after losing 62-26 against FCA on the 15th, they won against Riverside Christian 38-32. Now, Lighthouse has not played any games in the North yet. They have their game in the North this Friday, which we'll get into when we preview the games for Friday. But James, I believe you were there at that Lighthouse game. So you were you at the Lighthouse? Okay, so you were at the Lighthouse game for Riverside. I'm sure that the score reflected the game in a lot of ways with how close it was. And Riverside was seriously looking for their first win on the season, and we've seen at least one team get their first win on the season, which we'll cover that in our last game here for the recaps. But with Riverside, why did they lose by 6 points? What did it come down to?
Man, it was a tight ball game. It was one of the better ball games I've seen, and I was there with another head coach here in the conference that had the night off. But we were both very impressed with the ball game. Lighthouse went up 24-0 with about 2 minutes left in the before halftime, and of course we'll ask Coach Sharp about the game. But they went up 24-0 and actually had a player get ejected. It was a chippy ball game. I was surprised that there weren't any Riverside kids ejected. I mean, there were just guys going back and forth, and there was a lot of jaw jack in it, and it's going to happen. Trent knows that better than anybody. But it went back and forth. The player came out, and at that point, Riverside. I mean, guys like Riley Hall just massively stepped up. Riverside kind of found what they needed to do. They moved Hall to quarterback and let John Trahan play running back and do what he does best. But they got everything up and running. Hall ran for a couple touchdowns. And then after Lighthouse's last score, it was 38-18. 38-28 rather. And Riverside, they had an onside kick for Lighthouse, kind of just popped it up in the air. And Gus Hill, an 8th grader, big number 55, he took it and ran 50 yards for the touchdown. Just completely outran the kickoff team, who had to, they were trying to stop him from momentum coming back. But he picked up all the blocks he needed just down the sideline, took it in, and it was a 38-32 ball game. They forced a turnover. It was a punt, one of the two, and got the ball back, but ended up fumbling with about a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes left in the ball game. And just kind of stopped their drive. But, I hated to see that. But at the same time, I mean, there was a lot of fight. And I've said this about Lighthouse. These guys are not going to stop fighting. These guys do not lay down. They don't quit. And they've really, really shown what they're made of. And it's a reflection on the coaching staff. The fact that the coaching staff hasn't given up on them, despite the record and despite some of the tough games they've.
Now, I can't really say a whole lot about Lighthouse and their players and stuff because I personally don't talk about stuff until I see it for myself. So I'll be whenever we go over to their game, I'll start saying stuff about Lighthouse. But I do want to know, how did the line for Riverside do?
The line was good. I mean, they're obviously every line is going to struggle throughout a game, and there's going to be plays that they don't do as well. I mean, they were pretty decent. Lighthouse is a very formidable defensive line. They've got some really good guys up front. They got a big number 9, Dedrick McClain, and so he was able to make some noise. Several guys able to make some noise. Hill held up his side. Colton Thorne, the senior, he did pretty well. And so, everyone kind of stepped up. They obviously, Hall ran for a couple touchdowns, Riley Hall. And so, obviously that helped out a lot. But they did pretty solid. It was a good ball game in all facets of the game. Lighthouse had a lot of deep passes that they were able to get away, and a lot of deep completions. Parker Dillon, I think is his name, for Lighthouse, has had a lot of big catches. But at the same time, Riverside, they had a kid named Crutcher Rizell, and he came away with a couple close picks. He might have picked one off. I think they were just both breakups. But he was right there with those Lighthouse receivers, standing toe-to-toe and trying to make plays. And so that was really good to see for those guys, but a great ball game all around.
Yeah, and I think you said Hall ran a couple in for touchdowns, and I think he's going to start becoming a name you know of in this league, because I don't know what grade he is, but I know he isn't a senior.
He's a sophomore.
Yeah, so he still has his junior and senior year to keep on adding onto that name, because I didn't know a lot about him last year, and he's really stepped up for Riverside this year. And I think down the line through his career, he's going to be someone we know, like how we talk about like Rollins and Minor and people like that. We know them, and the league knows who they are. So, and I believe like Hall, as he grows up, he's going to be one of them players that we just know.
Yeah, and as James mentioned with the Riverside coaching staff, it's great of them to not give up on their players despite the record, of course. And the same can be said about Madisonville and the Heat when they were going into their game Saturday night and not having any wins on their record going in there. And they're still, it's like Coach Danny Grass and all of his assistants. They've all got some good dedication to them as well.
Yeah, and you were at that ball game last night. We'll go ahead and talk about it. You were at that ball game, and obviously the Heat took a little bit of a lead. Madisonville was able to come back and score, which we'll get that link out this week. But they had a news story out of a news station in Hopkinsville, did a story on them about the football team. That was a really, really cool story. But we'll get that link out there. But kudos to those guys on getting that. But how was the ball game? You were there.
Let's go in order of games. We'll get to that one in a second. But first, we do have. But Trent, what are you trying to signal to me for, Trent?
I don't want to forget. Me and James, I think we're both right on that game.
Okay, we'll of course get that later. Now, one of the larger upsets in the league, and of course debatable one of the larger upsets, Franklin Christian Academy beat St. Andrew Swanee 61-44. The undefeated team in the South, Swanee, who had a big upset against the Knights, who came back to win that game. They came in on a home matinee game at 4 p.m. and lost to FCA, where FCA, Trent, we were at that game. FCA went up 20-0 starting off in the first quarter, and then Swanee tried to fight back, and there were many penalties thrown in that game, many flags and such. But, I mean, it was really hard to say if the score was necessarily reflective of the game, but I honestly think that it was a hard fought because FCA came into that game knowing what would happen. They'd say, if we win, we keep our playoff hopes alive. If we lose, the best we can hope for is a bowl game. So they knew what was on the line, and they put everything into it, and a well-deserved win there for them, Trent. But specifically you, Trent, what did you see in that game?
Well, I'm going to be honest. I don't see how y'all are saying this was an upset at all. This is no way an upset. They were 2-0 in their conference. They haven't. The only team that I feel like they've lost to is CCS. I don't see how y'all said this was like this is really shocking that FCA beat Sewanee. Sewanee is good, no doubt. And I just want to say to Coach Hargis, thank you for throwing the ball. I love you as a coach, and I love your coach game plan of running the ball like for the first forever. It felt like, and then.
But I think the reason it was looked at as an upset was because Swanee was unbeaten. They had just knocked off Classical. They were on a roll, and they were at their home. Playing at 4 p.m. It was a little bit of a different start time for FCA to try to adjust to, but obviously adjusted. But that's why it was looked at as an upset. But you're right. I mean, potentially FCA should have been favored in that game. And I mean, they sort of were. I picked FCA in that ball game. I think you picked Swanee. No, did you pick FCA? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure Swanee's still trying to lead me over onto their land. But, yeah, for FCA, their defensive line, they were really good. I thought it was a good matchup with Zane and Tillman. I like that matchup that they had. But a player that stood out to me, he hasn't stood out to me all season. I've talked to him a little bit after FCA games. Was number 90 Harrison stood out to me as on offense and on defense. I feel like in that game he outplayed Zane, and that's hard to do. And FCA, they have two great linemen in Zane and Harrison. But Harrison, he showed he was a standout that game for me. I see why you were saying that that's an upset. It's just they were both undefeated. It's just FCA, they just had to play their games. And I feel like FCA keeps what they were doing and keeps the momentum. I think they'll end up going to the semifinals, or they'll end up going to the semifinals this year. And let me talk about Sewanee. I don't want to just brush them off. They did good. I'll remember this quarterback's name by the end of the season. What's
Justin
Stinsby? I'm sorry. I'll figure it out one day. He did really good that game too. And, there were some guys that usually don't show up for Sewanee that showed up that game. I know this one kid, I just forgot his number, but I know there was somebody that showed up that usually doesn't.
Well, you narrowed it down to about 15 guys. No, and I wasn't at that game. I was shocked at the score. Obviously, I would have thought that it would have been a lot closer in the beginning. But I think that for Franklin Christian, seeing Drew Holcomb or not Drew Holcomb, Daniel Holcomb step up and be the quarterback that they needed him to be, to keep that quarterback tradition alive of guys that they've had at that position. Brandon Minor, we knew that Brandon Minor was going to be solid. We knew that Quibido was going to be solid. Shindell. I mean, they've got a lot of guys across the board that have really been good for them, and Hayden Weeks as well. But like you mentioned, guys like Harrison stepping up, John Buchanan at the running back position. Just on all facets of the game, they've had guys step up that they didn't expect maybe, and so it was really good to see that. And I think that was one of the reasons for the win is they've had those guys step up and do what's been needed to be done. Same for Christian community and everyone who's having a great year. They've had guys step up, and that's what you need to do. That's what you need to have to be a successful ball team.
Yeah, and FCA coming out with a big win down there in Suwanee. So we'll see how their season goes as they have two South games in a row, then a bye, and then they have their final week a South game. So they're
rivalry night.
Exactly. They sort of
rivalry.
They sort of control their own destiny at this point, as do a different amount of teams, but we'll get into that as we progress through the season. We caught the second half of this game, and honestly, this was the biggest, one of the biggest matchups and one of the best matches to see this night. The Webb School against Franklin Classical, 50-48. The score was reflective of the game in all aspects. Both teams fought till the very end, and both of them knew that they needed this win to kind of help control their own destiny going into the playoffs. And we mentioned this a little bit on pre-show with James, but we'll get Trent because he was specifically at the game. But we mentioned with James on how Webb and FCA kind of got slow starts because they didn't have as many South games. Like Webb, because they're a boarding school, they had to start football essentially the week of the first week of their school. So both of them getting a little bit of slow starts, and Webb having their game they won against Hendersonville and then lost to New Life, but they've been on a win streak so far. But it's interesting to see with that game, especially because you said it on broadcast, Trent, it legitimately came down to if Webb's defense could make a stop, and they allowed 48 points from FCS, so there was a little bit of things that Coach Feldbergy will work on with the rest of them, but they managed to make the big stop when it mattered the most, and they won by a 2-point conversion, essentially.
Well, yeah, like I said, I said the Webb thing, but it was honestly, it was whoever's defense made the stop in the fourth quarter. It was whoever's defense made the first stop, and that was Webb. Man, but that game, that fourth quarter was a boxing match. There's a right hook there and all that, and just it was a boxing match. Blows going left and going back and forth with each other.
If you ever wanted to see what happens inside Trent's mind when he's watching a boxing match, it's just right hook and that. That's what he's thinking when he's watching boxing matches. Anyway.
Okay, funny you. So, and one thing I gotta say is the knowing just knowing each other of Jake Wright and the quarterback for Webb was crazy. There was sometimes he would throw him and he just trusted Jake just to run under it and catch the ball. And that happened on their last touchdown, I'm pretty sure. And so that's fourth quarter, and that was probably we didn't see the first half, but the last half I saw was probably the best game I've seen all season.
Well, the last touchdown was the kickoff return from Shamar Frey, who had a big year last year as a freshman. And I want to say he's either from Jamaica or the Bahamas, one of the two. They have a lot of boarding school players. Or a lot of
interesting fact on that. I was talking to Coach or to the athletic director, Scott Dorsett, and he mentioned to me it's about they have about 13 countries represented on the it was either around 10 to 13 countries. I don't remember the specific number he mentioned, but 14. Okay, so Trent told me they have 14 countries represented on that football team. They have Swanee beat in terms of countries representative 14-6, but it's still great to see how many different countries represented and playing the sport of football in Tennessee.
Yeah, for sure, and it's cool to see kids come over here and the fact that they want to give American football a try, and the fact that some kids do really well with it. Shamar is an example of that, just a pure athlete. But that kickoff return was really impressive. Cole Warren had a great ball game. You mentioned Webb gave up 48 points, but when you have an offense like Franklin Classicals with Cole Warren, Jaden Frazier, Caden Dickerson, and Eli Cornett running the ball, you've got
John Austin on the line.
Josh Austin on the line. Yeah, you got Jack James at receiver. I mean, they've got a high-powered offense that Swanee had an answer for, and Webb, for the most part, had an answer for, and where they were able to hang in there with them. But it's indicative of the team that they are. It was really impressive. Coach Witherington, I watched the game, and in the post-game huddle, he told Webb, he goes, "Hey, I've been around the game for a long time," and he has since 2008 or 2009. But he's been around for a long time, and he said that was one of the better games he's seen in a while. And he's been involved in a lot of football games, especially 8-man football. But for him to say that and say that about those kids, he had nothing but good things to say about Webb and their players. And overall, that might be a nominee for Game of the Year. I mean, between that game and the Riverside Lighthouse game, I mean, those are definite nominees for Game of the Year.
Yeah, and of course, a very close game to see, and one of the best games that we broadcast so far. One of the many that we have, and we still have about 5 more broadcasts to go before the playoffs. So it's going to be really good. And the final game we have to go over is the Tennessee Heat. Got their first win on the season against the Madisonville Defenders, 40-22, and that was their homecoming game. And if you watched the broadcast last night, it was a one-man show last night. Unfortunately, my color guys. Unfortunately, my color guys could not make it to the game. But I mean, it was decent. It was a lot better performance than what Madisonville has done in the past from games we broadcast. It had sort of a feel of the Hendersonville game that we covered, their home opener up there, where it was close. It was more one-sided. There was never a time where Madisonville had the lead over the Heat, but it was still at least better for Madisonville in terms of, the performance they had and such. Now, that's another thing we talked about with Riverside and their coaching staff not giving up on them despite the record. That's the same with Coach Danny Grass and his coaching staff on him not giving up on his team, even with the record that they have.
Well, and you talk about the coaching staff not giving up, the players not giving up. I mean, those guys just hanging in there and making it a fight and fighting until they said that it wasn't close, but the Heat didn't really dominate. They led and they made plays, but the fact that Madisonville was able to come back and score some points there at the end, that was really huge. But it was great to see, of course, the Heat, and technically that was their first win in a little over 2 years. Because of the co-op last year, you kind of don't count that. But it's the first time in 2 years that they got a win, and that was really great to see. They had a great ball game against Bowling Green, and they've had a couple other games that they've really fought hard and they've stayed in it. And it's great to see those kids get a win. And for Coach Scott, his first win as a head coach, and just really great for the organization and an opportunity for them to grow more. They've got some tough ball games coming up. They got a really big one Friday night. We'll talk about that in a second, but just some really, really tough ball games coming up in the season. But, it's good to see that they have a lot of fight in them.
Now I want to ask you, Spencer, not you, James. It's Spencer time.
Spencer time.
All right. I just want to ask, there was somebody I wanted to watch. I'm sorry that I couldn't make the broadcast last night. Some things came up. I wasn't able to make it. But this guy, his name was Preston something. He told me his number was going to be number 3. Did he stand out to you?
I'd have to look again. I don't think there was a number 3 on the roster, so I think they may have changed their jerseys around or something. But in terms of the Heat, I think I remember.
He was on Madison. He was on Heat, yes. And this was his first game because he had that 2-week thing where if you come to a game, if you come to a team, you have to sit out for 2 weeks and then you get to play. This was going to be his first game with the Heat.
Yeah, I don't remember him specifically getting any scores. He had some good rushes in there. I could be wrong. But he did participate in his first game last night with the Heat, and he did fairly well for his start. I'd have to go back and watch the broadcast, see if he had any scores, which likely he may have had one in there. But I mean, overall, it was a good victory for the Heat on their homecoming game and everything. And the cool thing about it as well, they had their halftime ceremonies. I mentioned it on broadcast, was that they had their halftime ceremonies, and because they're a homeschool organization, they had 3 different schools being represented, or 3 different programs and such for homeschools being represented there for senior night, which it's amazing that you have an organization that could kind of do that when some homeschoolers may not have the opportunity to go play for another school unless they officially co-op and such. So it's good that we have organizations like the Tennessee Heat. And that's the same to say about Madisonville, because they're a group of homeschoolers and maybe some people from schools who don't have a football program. So it's good to see programs like that exist. And James got one last thing, and then we gotta try and James, you good? Okay. All right. So at least in terms of that, Madisonville's still looking for their first win in franchise history, and we're hoping we'll see that in the future. But Trent, one more thing.
Yeah, congratulations to the Heat. They finally got their first win of the season, so that was really good for them.
Yep, absolutely. And now we get into one of the better portions of the show, our extreme interview, which is brought to you by Kentucky RV Sales. Just go to kyrvsales.com, as well as just look them up on Facebook, so you can see everything that they do over there. And is one of the cool things when we went up to cover Madisonville, they had our helmet promo up there. I'm sure they'll do that anytime we go up for Madisonville. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for our interview brought to you by Kentucky RV Sales. We have the head coach for the Lighthouse Christian School Lions, DuJuan Sharp Jr. DuJuan, I'm not sure if you're following the Titans game at all, but you following them closely or anything?
Actually, I'm not. I'm not even watching it.
Yeah, I don't blame you. There's some NFL fans here, some people fans of the Titans and not or such. So
yeah, my guys play a little earlier, so I'm good.
Absolutely. Well, Coach, this is our first time we're talking to you on the show, or being able to talk Lighthouse football. Let's get into this first question here. You guys had on the schedule that you were going to be facing off against some 11-man teams, and unfortunately those games got canceled, as well as the Hendersonville game that got canceled due to the aftermath of the storms from the hurricane. Could you tell us a little bit about what went into those 11-man games being canceled, as well as how the month break has sort of what have been the benefits and disadvantages of having a month's break before your first game?
Yeah, well, again, when we coming in at the end of May of last year, after they made the regime change and whatnot, it was an uphill battle, to say the least. A lot of the kids that were there prior to me arriving, they transferred out, things of that nature, which obviously was devastating to the program. So I did have to make the call to go ahead and cancel the 11-man games, as we were struggling with numbers of getting kids to come out and play football. I had about 7 strong all over through the whole summer, and I thought maybe once school began, more kids would decide to come out. And it's a plethora of reasons behind that. Maybe they were vacationing, and or they were just kind of wait and see how things are going, because they again, a month in school. Now I hadn't even been able to really make a good relationship with them just yet. So again, we made the call in July sometime that wasn't going to work out. And then, it was just more so once school did start up, just trying to, encourage more of the kids to come on out. I believe we're about 15 right now. And I believe we have maybe 3 kids from last year that decided to come back, in which, your Malik McMurray's, Caleb Blado, Ricky McDowell, and we had a couple others. But we're just trying to develop those kids into impact players or whatnot. So, a couple advantages and disadvantages over the downtime for that month. Obviously, the advantages were that we were actually able to teach the guys a lot. I just took it kind of started from ground zero with the majority of the kids. So, it was kind of bringing them up to speed as to, what what offense we run, what the terminology is, and things of that nature, in which we should have gotten taken care of in summer camp. But again, when we were faced with nobody really showing up, we just used that time as if it was summer camp. And again, the disadvantages is it's just an experience when the game time started up. Obviously, FCA was our first real live game action. We had no scrimmages, anything like that. And it showed first half. Our guys were a little shell shocked. Well, obviously, your Rickies and your Maliks and Parker Dillon, those all came into play. But the other ones, we had to rally around them to kind of get them ready to go. And second half, we were actually able to pull it together a little bit. I believe we won that half 14-6. But it is something great to build off of. So I'm pretty excited about the direction we're going in.
Coach, talk a little bit about those guys that came back from last year, guys like Ricky and Malik, Harrison Halprin coming back. You've also had a Parker, like you mentioned, come in and be really solid. But talk about the leadership from some of those guys and how invaluable they've been when it comes to maybe helping guys that haven't played the game or maybe haven't had as much experience, helping them kind of learn the game and pick it up a little bit quicker. And then also, how well have some of the guys that haven't had a chance to play, how well they kind of stepped up and kind of picked the game up?
I believe they're just having a little bit of technical issues with Coach Sharp here. I'm sure we'll get his mic up and running in just a moment.
All right.
There we go.
I couldn't hear you guys. Okay.
All right, sorry about that. No, I was just asking with guys like Ricky and Malik and Harrison coming back from last year, and then you've had guys like Parker step up. Talk about the leadership from some of those guys having the opportunity to help players that maybe either hadn't played or hadn't had a lot of experience, just helping them get up to speed and learn the ins and outs of the game. And then also, well, he dropped. We'll get Coach Sharp back with us momentarily. Sorry about that. Anyways, no, I was interested in seeing how well some of those guys from last year really stepped up and how big it's been. Oh, there we go. We're back. You there?
I believe Coach Sharp looks like he is connected back. Just having a little bit of technical issues on his side here.
Yeah, I can hear you guys, but it's going in and out. It's been doing that the whole podcast. I would hear you all, then it would go blank. And then I hear you all again, then they go blank.
All right, we apologize for that. James, let's try your question one more time just to be safe.
Talk about the leadership of guys like Ricky and Malik, Harrison, and then guys like Parker stepping up.
From you guys.
All right, let's see if we could try it here with James. James is saying talk about the players like Ricky and Malik and Harrison, just to talk about I think some of the leadership with those guys for your team.
Well, it's a bit unique. Obviously those guys are still trying to figure me out. Well, not really. I wouldn't say figure me out. Obviously, those guys still trying to. I want them to perform to a higher level than they are. As far as when it comes to leadership, a couple of things that I'm a little more stern on than what they're used to. But they're actually responding pretty well overall. I know Malik. That's one of my guys. I know for sure, man. When I'm on Saturday Gals, things like that, he's going to rally the troops and make sure they coming on. Harrison, he's another guy. Always, making sure he's ahead in the sprints. Rallying the troops, help. Encouraging the people. And Ricky, he's definitely coming along there, man. I know I say this with all. He's a little bit immature, but I see the growth in that kid every day, and that's probably one of the biggest ones that I'm high on. Obviously, I love all the kids, but I'm having Ricky for at least one more year. He's one that's really going to be a staple within this team in general on the offensive and defensive side. I'm putting a lot on his plate, and I'm loving the way that he is actually responding. But again, my job is to make sure that I push these kids to their limit, and we're definitely responding to our liking. So.
Coach, you had some guys move on from the program and move to some bigger, some of the bigger schools, Nolansville, Mount Juliet, Cane Ridge, and some of these guys are really doing well and really exploding and having great seasons. What does that say about to you? What does that say about 8-man football and the talent that we have here and the ability for that to translate even to 11-man, where sometimes the competition is a little bit faster pace and a little bit higher. But at the same time, our view on it is football is football.
Hello.
Okay, looks like James is just having some technical issues on his side. I'll repeat his question here. He said that you've got some players who have moved up to higher programs or to 11-man football and such and have succeeded well. James is asking what. Just give me one sec. Okay, he was asking what does that kind of say about the high level of competitive players that we have in this league for them to go up to the next level? But what does that all say about potentially people to look more into 8-man football as an option for playing?
Okay. And then you can get this from me and the rest of my staff, man. Football is football. No matter where you go, no matter how you play it, football is football. All really is, man, is predicated on coach. The coach has to be able to instill the work ethic, instill the type of mentality that you need to have to be competitive. At the end of the day, man, these kids are competitors, no matter if it's 7-man, 8-man, 11-man ball. I mean, if you can play football, you can play football. Again, um, I, I highly, highly, highly encourage everybody to not overlook this 8-man game. Because again, this is opportunities for kids who um, to be able to play, in a smaller school district or in a smaller school conference or in a smaller school period, and still able to get exposure. I know one of the kids I've been following. Kobe Martin. I actually I was able to speak with his father before they departed. And, the decision they made, I totally agree as a parent myself. If I want to look at a couple other variables when it comes to my kid, I totally agree and I respect whatever they did. But he was a ball player. He's going to be a ball player wherever he goes. If he decided to stay 8-man, I still believe he'll still be able to go to a high D1. But again, people leave for different reasons. And again, I'm not gonna go away from my saying that football's football. You can play, you can play.
Yeah, it's actually very right. We got another question for you here, Coach. You are a new coach with Lighthouse this year, coming into last year's fourth place team in MTAC. Just want to ask, give us a little bit of your background in coaching, kind of what you've done with football before, any prior experience with 8-man football, as well as what kind of led you to take the head coaching role at Lighthouse.
Okay. Well, me, I'm originally from Ohio. Played football, man, since I was a kid. I actually played football in college. I went to Ashland University. Played 2 years there, which is a Division two, NCAA Division two school. Then I transferred to Urbana University my junior and senior year. Obviously played there. I was actually a GA, in which I was a position coach for about a year or so. After that, I actually had when I was in school, and I decided to go ahead and go into the workforce so I can be able to, provide for my family, obviously. Um, I took a break from doing anything until my kid was actually able to play, because I felt that no one could teach him what he needs to know within this sport. So I actually coached him up from the time he was 5 all the way till last year. In which at that point, I knew I wanted to get back in. I always knew I was going to be coaching high school ball. I just didn't know when or where. And again, a mutual friend of mine, he actually advised that they were looking for a new coach, and then so with my business background or whatnot, another position opened up, an athletic director role, in which it's like, man, God was just working, you know what I mean, and it was perfect timing for me, and again, I'm just blessed to be able to have the opportunity.
So, Coach, you guys have a big, excuse me, you have a big game coming up Friday night. You got your first divisional game there in the North with the Hendersonville game canceled. You got that game. You got a week off, and then you play South Haven and Christian Community, who currently are undefeated or unbeaten. One of them will lose that after this Friday night, but you got a lot of big games coming up. Uh, what
Hello.
kind of what kind of preparation? Hey, go for it. Hey, get it, go, do it, do it, get it.
Okay, so as James was saying here, is that he was going over your schedule in the future. You faced off against FCA. You beat Riverside. You stand 1-1 right now, and then you've got Friday night your game against Bowling Green. You have a bye week, then you play at South Haven, and then you host Christian Community. So just give us a little bit of kind of what you're telling your guys going forward, as well as with what you have laid out, what kind of the mentality is going forward, and your potential of with only a few games potentially winning the North.
Right. Um, well, again, man, I'm just trying to, and instill in the guys, we're just going to prepare for every week. Every week is a game week. We're obviously looking to get better every week. That's the ultimate goal. And when we step out, Friday night between those white lines, man, we were going to compete, regardless of what the current standings are, who has what, or what, Lighthouse has been through with the transition of the previous coaching staff, as well as the departure of the of the guys who were integral parts of the team last year. When we strap up, we put this uniform on, we step between those white lines, we're going to compete. I'm not, conceding by any means, I don't want. I'm letting the boys know we're not going to have that mentality. We're going to play this game with pride. We're going to go out there. We're going to go as hard as we can, and then we're going to execute. Um, you know, um, Obviously the expectations aren't high from what I'm hearing, because of the turnover and all the great players that we lost. But again, my job is prepare these young men throughout the week, be ready to go execute Friday nights. So having that victory this past Friday was huge for the guys. It was a big confidence booster, and I believe that a lot of them believe that they can actually do some special things this year. I mean, we had a kid, Nate Hall, number 27, never played football before. He was a basketball player. He came out, decided to play, had a couple good carries, even scored his first touchdown ever. And so we're just going to build off of that. So right now, man, we have a lot of raw athletes, and we're just trying to teach the game. And again, I'm enjoying the process because what we got, it's going to be pretty special here.
Well, we really appreciate you coming on the show, Coach, and best of luck to you guys in the rest of the season. We're looking forward to seeing how you guys perform and potentially see you guys in the playoffs.
All right, man, I appreciate it. Thank you very much, fellas.
No problem. Again, that was the head coach, DuJuan Sharp Jr. of the Lighthouse Christian School Lions, and it's time for the special reveal, James. It's time.
But first, Spencer, who was that interview brought to you by?
I mean, I already said it once, but we will say it again, of course.
You can't say it enough times.
You're right. Kentucky RV Sales. So Kentucky RV Sales, as you know, if you go to kyrvsales.com, you can see all their specials. And we even post about some of their specials on all of our social media, too. We post on their trailer deals and all of those. So, but go to them first to hear it from them first, because we may be a little bit late on those deals. Follow us and follow them, as it should be.
They're on Facebook and Instagram, and you can get the hottest deals straight off the presses when you follow those guys on the social media pages.
Yeah, so just go to kyrvsales.com, go to Facebook, get some good deals on an RV today. All right, James. We were in partnership with 615sports.com. We have a new logo.
Yeah, I'm really appreciative to John Williams and Ken Maynard. These guys have worked incredibly hard. They have created our All-Star Game logo, and the deal with everything is hopefully this week we're hoping to have an online store set up We'll keep you guys updated, but hopefully we'll have an online store set up, and we're going to have T-shirts, short sleeve and long sleeve. We're going to have performance shirts as well as hoodies, and then mini helmets. And you can get our new logo that we're getting ready to show you, as well as the All-Star Game logo. Now, this is for last year's ball game. A lot of guys like Trent wanted some gear to be able to wear to represent the game and to remember the game by. And so, a lot of guys wanted to do that, which is cool. We apologize for not having gotten it yet, but we are getting ready to show you the new logo. But this week, hopefully, the online store will be set, and we'll get that to you guys. All you have to do is click on the link. You can go pick out a shirt. I think they're light gray, but like we said, long sleeve, short sleeve, hoodie, performance, and then you can also get a mini helmet, which is really cool. If you want to put that in your room, or put our new logo in your room and think about us all the time, we would be super honored if you guys decided to get some of our merchandise. This is a really big step for us. We're really excited about it. If you guys want to get some stuff and represent us out in the community or at ball games, we would be super honored. And this we don't make any money off this. The any proceeds that go from it, they're going to go into our travel costs for going around and cover the games. Some of the money will go into an all-star game fund to help pay for stuff, which, by the way, the all-star game November 11th. Maybe make sure you remember that. The weekend is the 9th through the 11th. And we'll be picking players. We'll probably send out invites first week of October for players, and then of course, leading up to it, we'll have a special show to announce the rosters. We'll have a special show where Trent and I will do a mock draft, and we'll kind of give you a preview of some of the guys that'll be there. But we're really excited about this, and what we're going to do is, if you are live with us, we are going to switch the picture that says MDI Construction Inc. We're going to switch it to our new logo, and Spencer's going to make that happen. So it's going to happen in 5, 4. I'm dragging out the countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and here is our new logo. We're really excited. We think it's fantastic. We're really appreciative to the guys at 615sports.com for making it happen. It's really cool. I really dig it. The obviously red, white, and blue are very patriotic. They're very neutral colors. The 8, obviously, it's very obvious what it stands for. The X, for extreme, obviously, but it raises questions. If you're wearing the shirt around and people ask you what it is, it kind of opens the door. It's a conversation starter if you'd explain, hey, it's 8-man extreme. Well, what do they do? This is what 8-man extreme does. So we're really excited about it. It's going to be on our social media, on our profile pictures and everything coming up. And so we will get it all out there, but we're really excited about this. Again, cannot thank 615 Sports enough for the work that they did on this, and they're fantastic. Go check them out for all your needs when it comes to gear and logos and graphic design. But I think it's fantastic. Trent, Spencer, what do you guys think?
Yeah, and especially the design of this that we went into for how we would make the 8 is that the X sort of represents one of the players, and of course the arcs on top and bottom of the 8 are also representative players like offense and defense. So that of course goes well into the design. It's not just an 8, and it's not just X, and it's 8. There are men in there, and then there's the X for extreme.
I see what you did there.
So what you see what we did there. That we did it.
This is a team.
We did it. Well,
there's no I in team unless you make the A a box A, and then there's an I inside of it.
I think it's safe to say, well, we made it. All right.
There's no I in team, but there's an I in win.
You're right about that. So we're going to keep the 8 logo on for the rest of the stream. As you guys know, Extreme Radio is brought by MDI Construction Inc. So, time to preview the games that we've got coming up for this Friday. Unless Trent is giving me a look. You got anything to say, Trent?
Yes. I got 2 new players to add to my hit list. Okay. I got number 90 for FCA, Harrison.
Graham Harrison.
Okay. Yeah, Graham Harrison. And I got number 50 for Webb. Spencer
let me get a roster here.
We're having a brain grant.
Yeah, we'll get you his name. But number 50 for Webb, he was really disruptive against the offensive line. Was a key. Brandon Hazar or Azar. He was a big factor in the late defensive stop in the fourth quarter to really put the dagger into FCS. And number 90 for FCA, he was just all over the place and blocking the line. And he stood out to me in defense, but he stood out more to me in the offensive line.
Yeah, and Brandon Azar, a junior, Graham Harrison, a senior. So Graham Harrison in his final season making Trent's hit list, and Brandon Azar, a junior, getting onto that esteemed few who are recognized by Trent on the hit list. Time to preview all of the games for this upcoming Friday, and we already said on the last show that this past weekend really helped shape the playoffs a little bit, and it has in some manners. But now it is going to shape the playoffs even more with this weekend's games. And as always, we will cover the game that we're broadcasting. We'll talk about that one last on the show. So let's go from the top to the north and to the south. So South Haven Christian School, the Patriots travel to Lighthouse to face off against the Christian Community School Colts. And as it stands now, this game, because of both teams being undefeated in the North, although Christian Community does have one more game in the North against Lighthouse, and South Haven does have one more game in the North against Lighthouse as well, this essentially, it looks like whoever wins this game is playing for hosting rights to one of the semis. But that could change depending on how Lighthouse performs. If Lighthouse gets a victory against Bowling Green, then they can keep that hope alive. But this game is very crucial because if South Haven or Christian Community win and then either of them beat Lighthouse, then they have solidified a home spot for the semis. So this game is extremely crucial for the playoff shaping. But Trent, you haven't seen South Haven play because James and I saw them play Madisonville in their season opener at home. No, they played Bowling Green in week 2. South Haven hosted Madisonville on August 11th. But you haven't seen South Haven play, but we've seen Christian Community play and how they played against FCA. Are they unstoppable?
Well, they're kind of like Alabama, but I feel like South Haven is the Clemson to Alabama. So I think it's going to be an interesting game. I don't know, since y'all said the FCA Sewanee was an upset, I don't know if y'all say South Haven wins, this will be an upset. But I'm going to take CCS in this game.
I would consider this to be an upset for South Haven. I would. We're going to get a hard time about it, but I would consider this an upset for South Haven if they get the win.
Yeah, and I kind of agree with you there because you have your starting quarterback and your backup quarterback. Both are hurt right now, so you're having to fall to your third string. So that's going to struggle a lot because I'm sure the third string doesn't know he's just not. The third string quarterback is just not as good as the 1 and 2. And I don't know if Xavier is playing in that position or if he's staying at the running back. But and I feel like the South Haven's defense can hold CCS. I just don't know if South Haven's offense can just get the snowball effect rolling in the game because CCS is the type of people that like to come out and just hit you in the throat and just stop you dead in your tracks and just completely kill your momentum by the end of the first quarter is the type of team CCS is. But I'm going to be taking the CCS this week.
James is just trying to pull up something.
I'm back. No, this is huge, and it's really going to come down to playmakers, like it always does. But it's going to come down to guys like Xavier Vincent versus Jalen Klein, like Nate Green versus guys like Devry Zapata and Zach Rogers. Aaron Reff and Colton Rollins. I mean, these are just going to be two knockdown, drag out teams that this is going to be a fight. And it's like I said, this is a rivalry game. It should be on the last week of the season, but it's not. This is the Battle of 76. This is Springfield and White House. Without being the public schools, it's the private schools going head to head and really just hitting each other. They're right down the road from each other. There's a lot. For me, this game is interesting because I go to South Haven Baptist Church, but I played for Christian Community, so that's probably why I won't be at the game because I don't want to be ripped down the half, right down the middle. Ripped in half, right down the middle. Anyways, but no, this is going to be a big ball game, especially for the North. It's like we told Coach Sharp, obviously. One of the teams will come out of Friday with a loss, but that loss will be a divisional loss, and that'll definitely make a big impact on the playoffs.
I just want to say something too right now. James, you can correct me if you want to, but I'm pretty sure with Nate being I believe the number one sack leader in MTAC, and I think Ron's is in the second place for the leading in sacks. Am I correct in that, James?
Leader in sacks. Matter of fact, let me take a look. Let me do some digging and see if I can figure out who the leader in sacks. I think Nate Green from South Haven is up there. I want to say he has like 10 sacks. A lot of defensive players across the board are having great years, but I know Nate Green has 10 sacks. Aaron Rev has like 8, and then Colton Rollins is at like 7. So I mean that's really tight between all those guys.
Spencer, you got anything to add to this matchup? I know you talked about it a lot the last week because they're trying to convince us to go be our extreme game of the week. I know
It is true. I've been trying to talk to these guys, but I have been outvoted. We are not broadcasting the South Haven Christian Community game, even though I've tried to tell them we should make up for it because we didn't go to the Christian Community Freedom game down in Alabama due to the storms. But I have been outvoted, so we will not be going to that game up at Christian Community. So at least for that, I think, Trent, you got one more thing? All right, he's got nothing else here. Okay, so we're going to be looking forward to that game because that will kind of give one team more favor to host a semi. But, of course, it could change depending on if both of them lose to Lighthouse or not. All right. Let's see. The next.
James, who did you pick?
He picked South Haven on the upset, or I believe, James, you are sticking with your preseason of thinking CCS would win.
I'm going to be honorable and stick with my preseason pick of Christian Community winning the ball game Friday night.
So honorable.
So honorable. Very honorable. The honorable Mr. Shutton. Anyways, I probably should know that. Anyways, but no, it's going to be a good ball game for sure.
And we'll, of course, see how both of those teams perform. We'll hear the scores and see the tweets, but nobody from 8-Man Extreme will be present at that game. All right, a game between interdivision, Hendersonville Christian Academy hosting the Franklin Classical School Knights. So Hendersonville coming off of a bye week. They had their loss to the South Haven Christian School Patriots. So they're going to be hosting a team from outside of their division. But it's hard to say because HCA started out 2-0. They seemed like they had a lot of promise, but then have been going on a losing streak so far. But I think Hendersonville may be able to do something here, especially since they're back on their home turf. But I think FCS is looking for more vengeance, especially after that bitter loss to Webb, James.
As I do social media work. Anyways, no, this is going to be a really good ball game. This is probably the one I'll probably stop by this game. I'll probably go to this one. I mean, if you look at it, FCS at 3-2, divisional 2-2, Hendersonville 2-3, 0-2 in the division. But what really sticks out for me is the offensive firepower for Classical. I know they started out 3-0. Hendersonville started out 2-0. But they've kind of been, they've both been on skids. Hendersonville's lost 3 in a row. Classical's lost 2 in a row. Classical have scored 100 more points than Hendersonville Christian, 208 to 110. They've also allowed 50 fewer points, 197 to 148. And so this is going to be interesting. Classical, like I said, they've got a lot of weapons and they've got a very high-powered offense. But the thing for me, and I know, Trent, you're probably going to keep an eye on this too, or you could wish you would keep an eye on it, but Well, Sturgis and Josh Austin, and just to see how that battle between these two guys, these two potential all stars will go.
Okay. James is such an honorable man. He's letting me talk right now. Yeah. Gotta love this guy. Maybe. Okay, but in this game, I'm gonna go for my predictions. Early off, I'm gonna pick FCS. But one thing I really want to see, and I won't be able to get to see, you'll luckily be able to see this if you go to the game, will be the battle in the trenches against Josh Austin and Sturgis. That's how you say his name, correct? Okay, Sturgis. I really didn't focus him that well because the first game I ever broadcast with y'all was the Madisonville versus Hendersonville game. That was the last time I've ever seen either one of those teams. And I know as both the coaches are great, but I know Meeks is gonna, get his team rallied up. He wants to get this win. I love that guy. He was one of my all-star coaches, so a little bit of bias towards him. So I'm drawing a blank. I just completely blanked. Who is Hendersonville playing?
Franklin Classical.
All right.
I'm sorry. With FCS, I could tell at that web game. There's a lot of heart in them guys. There's one guy, so specifically number 82. He didn't want to leave that field with an L at all. I just could see the emotion in him, not in a bad way, in a good way.
Jack James, one of the seniors.
Yeah, I could tell that on the after that game, I walked over to the sideline. He just wasn't talking to nobody. He was just kind of sitting by himself. It was like one of them games where you lose a tough one. And
I got to give you a hard time. It's another great example of that Pleasant View education. Wasn't talking to nobody. I'm just giving you a hard time. Anyways, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. He weren't talking to nobody. And thank you for correcting me there. But I know there's a lot of heart, and they want to fight to get into the playoff slot for them to go. And they know that they can get there. They just gotta dig down a little bit deeper and find that spark. And after that web game, FCS should not be sad at all. That was a great game. But now they got to go up against Hendersonville. I'm sure Hendersonville is going to give them a run for the money. I'm going to pick, like I said, I'm going to pick FCS to take the W home.
So you take FCS, and I believe you took Henderson. No, was it Hendersonville for you, James?
I took Classical as well. I've got Classical picked in this game.
All right, so one. Excuse me, I had my mic muted there. Okay, so we look at the next games here. Look at the South. Riverside traveling down to Webb to face off against the Feet. I think we said this about Riverside earlier in the broadcast of that their coaching staff not giving up on their guys for the record and such, but it could be the upset of the season if Riverside beats them, but it's hard to see them potentially get a win against Webb, but anything is possible in 8-man football. But at least with the way they've been playing on the season, it's real. Actually, the way they played against Lighthouse, if they play the same way they played against Lighthouse with just a little bit more drive, then they might have the potential to beat Webb. But at least if they play the way their record has shown, or at least in blowouts they've had against FCA, it's hard to see. But again, anything's possible in 8-man football.
I want to say something about the effort. I have been there where Riverside is. What's the record right now? I've been there
0-6.
I've been there 4 times in my 5 years at Pleasant View. I know where they're at. Where you're as a player, you just want to give up. You feel like your season's done. You don't have a shot to make it anywhere. You feel like your season's done, so you just want to give up. But I just want to let them guys know not to give up, because I remember my last year, during practice, the guys when we run the laps, they would just walk because they were like, "What's the point?" And I thought that I didn't like that much. And good on the coaches to keep their guys pumped up and ready, wanting to play. As you can see in that Lighthouse game, they still want to play football. And I love that, like, once you're 0-6, it's just hard to bounce back. But I feel like if they get a win against Webb, that would be huge for the guys. That will be their Super Bowl win of the year, is if they beat Webb. Because I remember when my team last year, we beat South Haven, and that was my Super Bowl win for my season. And so I think if Riverside can come through, and if they play their best like they did against Lighthouse, they have a chance. In saying that, I'm going to take Webb, just because that last game I saw, Webb's ferocious is all I can say. That's like the description. You look up ferocious in the dictionary, it's a foot.
That might be the line of the year. Look up ferocious in the dictionary, it's a foot.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, in the chemistry them guys have with each other, it's like they all think as one mind. So that's the reason why I'm going to be picking Webb. But that's the reason why I'm going to pick Webb. It's just because they move as a unit, not as, like, you have one guy wanting to be the star. You have each guy's taking sacrifices. That's why I'm going to take Webb. And yeah, that's the only real thing I say. And for Riverside guys, keep y'all's heads up. Y'all season isn't over. Y'all have seniors on that team. And I know the main reason why I didn't quit my junior year is because I want to keep on fighting for my fellow seniors, because I know this is their last couple games, maybe potentially ever for football. So for Riverside guys, don't keep your heads down. Look to the future.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm going to give you a chance to catch up with me in predictions. I have Riverside picked preseason, and so I'm going to stick with my pick. I think these guys, at some point, if it showed with the Heat, at some point, if you keep on busting your tail and just working hard, you're going to get a win. And I think that, these guys, I don't know if it's going to be this week. It could be against the Heat in a couple weeks. It could be against Hendersonville in a couple weeks, which we've decided to broadcast that game on a Thursday night. But anyways, spoilers. But no, I think that, at some point these guys are going to get a win. So I'm going to stick with my preseason pick. I've got Riverside pick to win it, and we'll see what happens.
Remind me, which game are we broadcasting Thursday night that you said?
Thursday night. It'll be the Thursday night before rivalry night, and it'll be Riverside Christian. It'll be Riverside Christian hosting Hendersonville Christian. So that'll be October 19th. 7 p.m. kickoff, I believe.
All right, so we'll be live for that game, and it is distant from now, but we of course will be proud to broadcast that game, part of one of the extreme games of the week. And continuing on, let's see, we went over Webb and Riverside. Franklin Christian Academy, the Falcons host the Heat. Now, the Heat just came off of their first game. We talked with Ryan Scott about it, and he said in our post-game interview that the FCA is a solid ball club, and he's telling the guys just to try and finish the season strong. So that's what they're going to try doing going to FCA. But for FCA, again, they're still trying to keep their playoff hopes alive. They have to win out from here to be able to advance to the playoffs, because you've got a competitive South right now, because you've got Webb, who's undefeated in the South. You've got FCS and Swanee, who only have one loss on the season in the South. So FCA has to keep their wins up to be able to have that chance the week after against Webb to potentially clinch the South. Now, again, FCA does have their game during rivalry night at FCS, which that could very well be what determines if FCA gets the number one seed in the playoffs or not. It could be, but at least as of now, we're not 100% sure. But this game between FCA and Heat, it's another one of those crucial games where you have to win.
Now, you know as well as I do that FCS-FCA game, there's not an away game for either team. It's a home game for both teams. They play across the street. Anyways, now Webb does not have a loss in the South, so they're unbeaten in the South. And so,
same with FCA.
1-0. Yeah, and same with FCA, but FCA is 2-0. Like you said, they've got a big game coming up with those guys next week. And, this is going to be big for the Heat, a big win for those guys Saturday night. They're going to have to muster up everything they can to go into a ball game against one of the better teams in the conference right now. But this is going to be a tough battle for those guys. If they can get the win, then that would be volumes for those guys. If they get the loss, don't be disappointed. Don't beat yourselves up. You're playing a darn good ball club. For Franklin Christian, you want guys to get out of there without injuries. You want guys to get out of there, healthy, and you don't want you definitely don't want any ejections. You cannot let that game get chippy because you've got Webb next, and if you have guys kicked out against Heat, they have to sit out for the Webb game, and if that happens, that would really, really shift the tide, turn the tide for that Webb game, and potentially give Webb an even better shot to win the ball game.
Now, just to make sure, James, did you have FCA winning that game? Did you have FCA winning?
I have.
Let's see if he's.
I have to pull my notes up. I have FCA picked for that ball game.
All right. So, and then Trent, what do you got?
Yeah, FCA against Heat. I'm going to take FCA. But let me tell you why. I think he has one of the more underrated defensive line. Their pass rush against Bowling Green was incredible. But the reason why I'm going to be taking FCA is because I feel like, and I think y'all could agree with me, FCA has the best offensive line. Y'all might be able to, Riverside, it could be in the talks with that as well. But I feel like FCA has the best offensive line, and I don't feel like their defensive line is good. They're really good, but I don't think they're good enough to get past the offensive line of FCA. So I'm going to be taking FCA this game.
All right, so we got both guys picking the same team this week, so we'll see how it goes from here. All right, so let's see. Heat being hosted by FCA. Someone's mic is still on here. Keep the echo going off there, James.
It's me.
All right, let's see. Classical HCA. The other game we have coming up, as we saw both teams, Madisonville is being hosted by St. Andrews Swanee. We have it marked there for a 2 p.m. game on the Saturday afterwards.
And that game will still be happening. Possibly we'll get more word later on throughout the week. I know it depends for Coach Jones. He struggles getting players together to go, and so potentially some guys could be busy on that game. I mean, if he can't take more than 9 players, I'm sure you would. Although I'm the guy that could pass for high school senior, anyways. But hey, it's true. No, but if he can't take more than 8 or 9 guys, I mean, he may take 9 guys. But it'd be interesting to see what that turns out to be, and who all is able to make the trip for that game. But we'll get a further update on that game throughout the week.
Yeah, and of course, it'll be interesting to see now if that game does happen. It'll be interesting to see how that results, especially with Swanee's loss to FCA. Maybe some momentum has shifted down for Swanee, and Madisonville could put up some more points in that game, or even somehow potentially win it. But we'll just wait and see how that happens. And now the broadcast of the week. I was outvoted, but it was originally on the extreme game of the week. I was outvoted, but it was originally on the helmet schedule anyway. And because of how their schedule worked out, we are having to broadcast this game. Bowling Green Christian Academy travels to Lighthouse Christian School to face the Lions. Now, we're in the Redneck press box again on top of the bleachers for that. But this is going to be one of the more interesting games because if you look at how the helmet schedule is now, because of the top teams in the North, South Haven and Christian Community right now undefeated in the South, and the top teams in the South right now technically would be Webb and FCA if the season were to end today because they are undefeated in the South. It would be a flip of a coin for who's first and second by MTAC bylaws. That's answering your question there, Crawley. You commented on their Webb and FCA, South Haven, and Christian Community are technically the top 4 teams in MTAC right now based on currently. Yes, that's what he was clarifying. He was asking that. But currently they are the top teams in MTAC. But anyways, with Bowling Green and Lighthouse, this could potentially be a determiner for who goes to the bowl game, potentially, because Lighthouse hasn't played enough games. We don't know how many losses they could have, but if Bowling Green wins this game, then that would give them more of a run for the bowl game, because South Haven and Christian Community, they've actually both beaten Bowling Green already, and Bowling Green lost this past Friday. And Hendersonville declared themselves ineligible for the playoffs around the beginning of the season. So it's up to either Lighthouse or Bowling Green to try and go for the MTAC Bowl. So this game could basically shape which team in the North will go for the bowl game. But of course, that does depend on how Lighthouse performs, because it could end up being either South Haven or Christian Community in the bowl game. We don't know. That's the beauty of MTAC 8-man football, is because of how the algorithms work. As of now, we don't know who will be in the playoffs until essentially the very last week. But Trent, Bowling Green bias, as we say for you. I know you're really looking forward to this game, and you haven't seen Lighthouse, and you said you won't speak about Lighthouse really until you actually see them perform. But I'm sure you're wanting your boys to win it so they can have a better shot at the bowl game.
Okay, the bias, it's not that bad. Yeah, I haven't seen the secondary for Lighthouse, so I can't really. What?
It's that bad.
Okay, I'm asking. Okay, James, let's have a conversation about this. All right, tell me, is the secondary for Lighthouse good, or bad?
Insert the Jeopardy music here.
Do. It's James.
I don't think that's how the Jeopardy music goes.
No, I'm pretty sure it doesn't. I'll tell you, the big thing is with McMurray being ejected from Friday's game, he has to set out the game against Bowling Green. I think that's going to hurt Lighthouse with the passing attack that Bowling Green has. If Bowling Green, now they got some big boys for Lighthouse. I mean, some big boys. And so, if Bowling Green can get their passing attack going, I think that'll probably be what helps them a lot more Friday night. Lighthouse still has some great defensive backs. Parker Dillon is one of them. And they've got guys that are going to be able to make those stops. But I think if Bowling Green spreads it out and goes 3 or 4 wide, and if that offensive line can give Tanner Brown just a couple seconds to get passes away, and they can loosen up that defense, I think that's going to be the formula for those guys. For Lighthouse, you got big guys. You just got to ground and pound. And you've seen for Bowling Green, of course, Swanee played them close, but we know about that game. But all the other games that teams have just grounded and pounded against Bowling Green, other than Madisonville, if you don't make mistakes against them and you run the ball and you impose your physicality upon them, you challenge Bowling Green to bring a physical aspect to the game. And, we'll have to see if they can match that.
Yeah, but we know that almost in Madisonville. My bad. We know Bowling Green has an offense because they scored twice on. I don't know if it was second string or not, but they scored twice on Christian Community, which is debatably is the best defense in MTAG right now. So them being able to score on CCS means they can probably score on anybody.
Yeah, but that second touchdown came against their twos.
Okay, well, they scored a touchdown. That means their scheme is doing something right. Am I correct, James? Yeah, and let me just go ahead and say this. Yeah, I'm going to be taking Bowling Green this week.
We wouldn't have guessed.
Who'd have thunk it? Who'd have thunk it?
I'm going to take Bowling Green, but
In stereo.
And the one thing against Lighthouse, they need to have their pass rushing going quick, because if you give Tanner more than 3 seconds, the ball's going to be gone. Because the wide receivers that the wide receivers that the Bowling Green have with Chad and Stock and Riley Davis, they have a lot of weapons on their wide receivers, and the really tall dude, number 20, man. I'm upset Spencer. Spencer.
Wrong one.
And he's really tall. And if you just throw it up to him, he's going to come down with it. So Lighthouse needs to really work on their secondary for this week if they really want to stop the main part of the Bowling Green's offense and get nice little pass rush going against the kind of young, kind of not. I believe they have a senior on their line, but I know more of their line is younger and less experienced. So it's gonna be a battle. I feel like I think it's gonna be a real close game. I think it's gonna be, in James' words, a toss-up game. So, but James, I want to finally let you talk.
Come on, James.
Or not.
Well, I appreciate. I'm over here doing social media work. Anyways,
Not during the show.
No,
Priorities.
I am actually going to pick.
What's your preseason? You've been sticking with the preseasons today.
Preseason is Bowling Green. I don't want to pick the same as Trent though.
Because we haven't done that for the past 3 games.
Hold on, let's just clarify real quick. James has been saying this entire broadcast, I'm going to honor my preseasons. I'm going to do that, and then this is the third time you've called an executive order on your preseason. Third time.
Let me ask something else. We've picked the same team every prediction besides the first one.
Fine. I will stick with Bowling Green. Nothing against Bowling Green. This is nothing against Bowling Green. I just want to make the predictions interesting, and I want to
pick Lighthouse. Pick Lighthouse.
No, I'm going to stick with Bowling Green.
Pick Lighthouse.
James.
You scared? Pick Lighthouse.
Fine, I pick Lighthouse. My pick is Lighthouse. Put it in the books. Chisel it in stone.
Okay, well, James, at least in terms of your prediction, I mean, not just for the sake of competition, but why did you originally pick Bowling Green? And aside from wanting to compete to make it interesting, do you think Lighthouse will genuinely, hosting Bowling Green, will beat them?
I legitimately think Lighthouse can beat Bowling Green. I think they will. Preseason, we didn't know what Lighthouse had for real. I mean, we didn't know how many guys were coming back from last year's team, and I saw Bowling Green's team, and I didn't have Bowling Green picked to have a lot of wins. I only have them picked to have 2 wins, but I did have this picked as one of the games that they would win. I still think that they'll have, obviously they have 2 wins now, and I still think that they're going to have a great season. But from seeing Lighthouse last week and this week, I've seen both Lighthouse games so far. I think that they are going to have what it takes to win Friday night. So that's why I'm changing my prediction. I'm going to pick Lighthouse for Friday night.
Yeah, and we'll be live at that game for the only extreme game of the week we have this week, because there are no more Saturday games that we'll be broadcasting. We do have that Thursday game during rivalry weekend, as we'll cut. But this will be our only extreme game of the week. Lighthouse hosting Bowling Green. So we'll be live from that. As always, just subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit the bell icon so you can get notifications every time that we go live, and you can know firsthand when we are live on the field. For James Shannon and Trent Legate, I am Spencer Thompson. One more time, Extreme Radio built by MDI Construction Inc. That's MDIConst.com, or search them up on Facebook so you can see all of their latest projects. So everybody enjoy your Sunday afternoon. We'll see you on Friday night, and we'll also see you next week as the playoffs continue to shape. We'll see you all later this weekend. Good night, everyone.
Enjoy the logo. Enjoy it.